Hey, Ava.
Hey, what's up?
All right, so we're going to do a Q&A here. Kind of me as the mental skills coach and you as the professional athlete, pickleball being the sport, and let's have some fun with it.
I'm ready for this public therapy session.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't call it therapy. I would call it learning mental skills, refining what you have and maybe learning what you don't know. And I think what makes this important and exciting is that mental skills, mental health are both so important in sports and in life. I mean, if you look at someone like Michael Phelps, most amount of gold medals in the history of the Olympics, I think 23, 24 medals, and I think he had 28 medals. But, he suffered from mental health issues, and it's not always the glory, but it's the struggle that gets you the glory and being able to be resilient. And so I'm excited that listeners here that might have the same issues can both learn from what we discuss and be inspired to go after their dreams and goals fearlessly.
Yeah, that's awesome. He's a great example because, yeah, he did have some mental health struggles, didn't he?
Yeah.
And that's why he got into swimming, right?
Yeah, and not only was it therapeutic and he was very good at it, but that I remember him saying when I saw him interviewed, it was really nice to meet him and everything, but he was saying that when all the lights, all the glitz and the glamour, the publicity, all the gold medals were gone, he had that feeling of emptiness, like now what? And I think a lot of athletes that are high profile athletes struggle with that. It's, well, now what? And if you have your purpose to fall back on, then there is no and now what. It's the same. It's just living your purpose, but in different environments.
Yeah. So let's take a quick second and let's talk about purpose really quick. I know that you have great values, and I've recently started to help out a little bit in what you do. So why don't you talk a little bit about PICL League?
Yeah. So the Pickle League, Pickleball for Incarcerated Communities League, was started about a year ago, and I was brought on as its head pickleball coach probably about 8 months ago. And it is a nationwide organization. We're in about 10 states right now, and I cover the state of Connecticut. And what we do is go into prisons. There's two different types of incarcerated communities. There's prisons and jails. Jails are much smaller. There's probably about two or three jails in Connecticut that wouldn't have a gym or enough space to coach pickleball. But then the other ones, the larger ones, the 10 or 11 that I've gone to and coached at, have indoor and outdoor gyms or basketball courts that we have lined for pickleball. And the mission is to not only coach pickleball with these prisoners, but also give them a sense of hope and a value without judgment. And then those that are released, some of them would be released, a lot of them not. But in the maximum security prisons, a smaller percent are released. But the ones that are, it reduces recidivism rates, which means they don't come back. They stay free. And for me, it's really rewarding because I believe that I'm making a difference in someone's life on and off the pickleball court, both physically, mentally, and emotionally.
That's so awesome. So what would you say is the number one thing that's most surprised you working with a program like this?
You know how upbeat and positive the prisoners are with me. Maybe that's because they're really happy to see me, that this is their playtime. This is what they've been on good behavior for. And now it's happening, and they're getting a pickleball lesson. They're getting coach match play for those who already know how to play a little bit. But for me, it's shocking of how grateful they are, that I'm there, that we are there. And that blows me away because they could be really negative or bummed out because most of them, won't see the light of day. And that's tough. So it's kind of making the most of what you have and being in the moment. So that's by far been the most surprising thing for me.
Awesome. I'm gonna grab my key.
Well, did you have fun going there for the first time?
I was shocked. I was truly shocked at the level, at the respect, at how present everyone was. Anytime I felt like I shared any sort of tip, it was like their eyes were the size of quarters. They were completely locked in, listening, and you could just really tell that they wanted to get better and that they really wanted to be there.
Yeah, and that's what I sense and feel each week when I go is that sense of gratitude. They're open to learning. Although I will say that the juvenile facility in Cheshire, that was rough. That was by far the toughest one. And the first 15 minutes, they were not paying attention. They didn't care that I was there. They really weren't open to much coaching. And after we finished the dynamic stretching and started a drill with targets, I sensed it kind of going sideways. And so that's when I kind of got everyone's attention and say, hey, look, I'm here. I'm coaching you the way I would coach a professional pickleball player or athlete. You know, Basically, I'm not judging you in any way. And then one young man, 20 years old, African American, said, you mean you don't see me as a criminal? And I said, no, I see you as a person. And at that moment, you can hear a pin drop, and we had everyone's attention, and they did the task with vigor, and they hit the target, and they high-fived and chest bumped and jumped over the net. And it was just transformative when you demonstrate caring without judgment, and it made a difference. And I was there for 3 hours that day, and after the 3 hours they said, coach, promise us one thing. And I said, what's that? They said that you'll come back. So for me, that was really powerful. And I'm learning as much from them as that they're learning from me.
That's so amazing. And I'm sure that's why you stay so inspired to keep going back and to keep working with them as hard as you can because you really are capable of changing someone's life.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that if you go in there with a positive attitude and you're open minded as a coach and you're looking to just help someone and not judge them for what they've done, but deal with them of who they are. And they're better than that. They're better than their circumstance. They've gotten their freedom taken away from them. Why not give them another chance?
And pickleball can be so healing for people in that circumstance because pickleball is a social sport. It encourages communication, it encourages leadership, it encourages healthy competition. And I can see how people in incarcerated facilities could really, really benefit from the game and it just incorporating it into their life. And even after they get out, they'll be able to go, like you said the other day, they'll be able to go to a public park and they'll be able to find a sense of community right off the bat just by being able to play, being respected for their game.
Absolutely. The other surprising thing, I mean, it wasn't as shocking, but it was surprising that there are some serious athletes in prison. I don't know if they played professionally, but they're athletic, fast. I've asked some of them that some of them told me they played baseball before and other sports, tennis. So you have these athletes that they're in a different environment, but they're true athletes. They have a gym, and unfortunately, they have a lot of time on their hands, Ava. So some of these guys are buff, and they're working out all the time. So they have that potential of being great. They have the time, and they have the space, and they have this community. So it's my hope that they do get out and make something of themselves. And I could see the pickleball community embracing them right away and respecting them for their game and not judging them for a mistake they've made in the past. And that's what excites me. I think I was mentioning to you, Ava, the other day, who knows? I mean, I could see a couple of the guys turning pro, and what a story that would be for pickleball. Is look at this, look at the road to pro. It took a detour, but they got there.
There was one guy who we were playing with, and I was shocked. I think he was like definitely the best player there, the coach of the group somewhat. He was beating me in hands battles.
Yeah, he's the best of all of the prisons. He's the best of everyone. He's the one that I think has a lot of potential, and he's also ambidextrous. He could change the paddle with both hands, so he doesn't usually hit a two-handed backhand or a one. He usually hits two forehands, a righty and a lefty. I think he's naturally righty, but he can hit lefty as well. And yeah, they're always tapping their chest with their fist when they see me and when I leave, you know, giving me a lot of respect. And for me, that just means the world because I know I'm getting through to them and it's not taking long, in a one session, 1 2 hour or 3 hour session, I see the transformation. And as you saw by the Eagles mural, the saying I coined a few years ago and that I use with mental skills, the fact that they would paint a mural permanently on the gym wall, for me is just wild.
I loved that. It was as soon as I saw that, I was so inspired. I was like, this is a special place. This is a special group. Can you go through the acronym? The
Yeah.
Eagles acronym?
So for years, being a mental skills coach for mainly tennis athletes, but now pickleball athletes and other athletes, you know, there was a saying of controlling your controllables. And in being certified with high performance mental skills athletes, it's controlling your controllables and accepting the things that you cannot control and focusing on the things that you can and dealing with them. And I was always saying, well, you got to focus on your effort. Forget if you won or lost. You don't have any control over that. Even though it's a trap, because a lot of athletes that get better feel like they have control over that. But it's the effort and attitude and your gratitude. And in repeating those words, you know, I said, I think there's a word here because I had just bought my Nikon camera as a hobby like 3 years ago, and I was taking pictures of these bald eagles. And so that's another passion of mine. And I'm like, wait a second, if I combine both passions, I think I'm spelling eagles. And sure enough, it was effort, attitude, learning, enjoyment, sportsmanship. And if you put it all together, then you focus on playing freely. And the focus and the freely are the two silent F's. But you have Eagles F. And that was what they painted on the wall because that's what I went through probably about 8 months ago when I first met them. You know, at the end, I talked to them about, hey, you got to control your controllables. And especially that some of you may never get out of prison. You can't relive the mistake that you made to get you here. But what you can do is deal with what you have here. And you have your freedom taken away. And that's why it was interesting because when I asked them what letter resonates most with them, the unanimous response is F for freely. And I think that's because they've had their freedom taken away and they appreciate being able to be themselves, true to who they are, and play freely and enjoy being with each other and competing and learning a new sport. And for me, that's big.
That's amazing. I love that so much. Yeah, something that I noticed when I was there really was the gratitude. Like you could just feel the gratitude in that gym. Everyone was so present, everyone was so in the moment, and a big part of it for me was noticing that everyone was just so happy and so engaged in pickleball. No one was on their cell phone because no cell phones were allowed, but
Yeah.
nowadays, if you go to a public park or go to practice every water break, it's like people are just on their phones the whole time. But the conversations, the questions were just so much more I'm struggling to find a word, but
I
but
think real comes to
real.
mind.
Yeah, so much more real.
They were so authentic,
Yeah.
these inmates. I've coached, adolescents, adult men and adult women, and they really are hanging on every word that you're saying. They have a huge amount of respect, especially for you being a top professional player and the number one collegiate player. I mean, that's in and of itself a huge accomplishment at a young age. And they respect that you're taking the time out of your day going there to try to help them with something that you're trying to master and that they would love to get better at. And so, yeah, the authenticity both ways from the coaches and the athletes for me is inspiring.
How long? So you've been doing this for just 1 year?
The organization started last year, and I was brought in to do the coaching about 8 months or so, 8 or 9 months. Yeah, and that's when
They've
we first started going in and coaching. Yeah,
they've made a lot of progress for only been playing for 8 months.
yeah, it's amazing. Some of them I think started maybe a little bit before, just kind of they didn't really know what they're doing. But then when I went in there, it's no, you got to drop that. You can't drive it all the time, and you got to get up to the non-volley zone line. All the same things I would say to you if I was coaching you, Ava, is you got to play smart. You can't just hit the ball hard. You got to have a purpose with every shot. And yeah, I mean that's really important. And even with you with competing, when I talked a little bit about fear the other day, and you know these guys, you don't see fear in their eyes at all. They're there and they're going out and they're playing. And if you think about it, you know it could be scary. Hey, I'm stuck in here with people I don't know for the rest of my life. I mean, that's some serious challenge and fear. So then you look at Ava. Hey, you're just in Virginia at the center court. Round of 16 against ALW. Hey, there's no fear there. That's joy. That's utter joy and gratitude and privilege and honor to be in that position. Billie Jean King wrote that book, Pressure is a Privilege. And I really believe that when you feel pressure, especially for a professional athlete, when you feel pressure, that moment, you got to spin it in your head and say, you know what? I'm fortunate to be in this position. There are a lot of people that would die to be in the position I'm in right now. Let me make the most of it.
This is good for me because something else that I really wanted to talk about today was the topic of burnout. I feel like recently I've been struggling with a little bit of burnout, and I don't really believe in like burnout in a real sense because I mean when you go to places like you realize that burnout is just a lack of gratitude. And burnout is never, you're never actually burned out from the sport itself. It's never the sport's fault. It's always external pressures, overexertion and training, emotional exhaustion from traveling and competing. But I've been feeling I've been forgetting to be grateful. Especially during practice, I'll notice that my motivation is gone. When you practice hours every single day, it's hard to be motivated every single minute of all of those hours. But then it's like I'm not working hard enough because I'm not working and being motivated at the same time. I'm just sometimes going through the motions playing to play, but I know that I need to practice this amount because this is what other people in my position do and I don't want to fall behind. So I guess my question is how do I find a balance of being motivated during practice when I just have no motivation left?
Well, this conversation just got very real. So I have a unique definition for burnout. I don't believe burnout exists when you're doing something that brings you joy. Burnout exists when you do something you don't like over and over. Okay. Then there's burnout. But when you do something that is aligned with your purpose, then I wouldn't call it burnout. I would call it maybe mental exhaustion, physical exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, but I wouldn't call it burnout. Burnout is, you know what? I shouldn't be doing this. And so then I'll ask you the $1 million question, Ava. Why pickleball for you?
I love it. I'm good at it. My whole family loves it. Everyone I know loves it. I enjoy playing it. It's the training and the working on specific things and trying to improve at the things that don't come natural to me that gets really, really frustrating.
Well, frustration is the signal or impetus to breakthrough. You can't have a breakthrough or progress without frustration, just like you can't have progress without fear. So, fear is basically the obstacle winning out. And when you get over your fear, you've climbed the obstacle. So for you, yeah, believe me, drilling and training. I mean, me as a pickleball coach and player, I also play, but I don't love drilling. I actually love point construction, strategy of points, hitting really cool shots and like kind of high-fiving people, or even if my opponent hits a great shot, I'll go over and paddle tap that person. That's what I love about practice. So I hear you on the drilling, but then you look at it with that you love pickleball because you're good at it, your family plays, it brings you joy. So then pickleball itself should never bring you stress. Pickleball should be the relief of the day-to-day stress that you have. And so, what then I would say to you is give me an example of something that you're getting frustrated with in practice, a specific shot or strategy that you're working on that's frustrating you.
So, my older brother and I have been talking about the fact that I play too passively. He says that I play like I'm waiting for something to happen or like I'm waiting for someone else to win the point, like my partner to win the point for me, which I don't know. I think that I do a good job of setting up my partner a lot, but he's right because I could definitely play more aggressive and I've never really felt capable of that. Um during during matches, I do kind of rely on my consistency and I'm definitely not the person usually who's putting the ball away. Aside from singles, singles, I think I do a really good job playing aggressively. You have to in singles, you have to win the points
Yeah.
yourself. But I've struggled with doubles, so I've been practicing trying to hit the ball harder. He tells me that I need more pace on the ball and that um, I'm not going to get to the next level if I don't start taking control of the points and hitting the ball harder and trying to play more aggressive. But it's something that is kind of annoying to practice because I just feel like no matter how hard I try and hit the ball, like I feel kind of all over the place. Like I can't, constructing the points when you're trying to be aggressive the whole time, it feels so chaotic to me.
Well, I mean, James is right as far as being aggressive. I would just understand what the word being aggressive is. So there's taking risk, there's being aggressive. Those are two different things. Things that are aggressive could be risky, things that are risky could be aggressive, but they are or can be mutually exclusive. So for example, if you get a short ball in singles and you don't approach the net by hitting an approach shot in the corner and coming to net, that in and of itself is risky because if, like against ALW, if you just are passive and hit a mid-court ball right back to her two-handed backhand and stay back, she's coming in on that next one with that cross-court roll. I saw that point against you. You had an amazing point, by the way. I wish I had a video of it. You had this amazing point, amazing get, and you hit a winner on the line or something like that. And one of them was that you got the call ruled in your favor. Anyways, what I would say to you there in the practices as far as being aggressive is you have to redefine finding your joy. Right now, it seems it's more tied to being a counterpuncher or a setup player. But in singles, you have to be the setup player and terminator all at the same time. And that's what makes it chaotic. And I like that word. It is kind of controlled chaos. So if you have that mindset, though, it's kind of like taxes. If you don't file your taxes and you let it happen, only bad things can happen to you. But if you're ahead of it and you get your taxes in on time, then it's a lot better. It might not be joyful, but all the time, but it's a lot better. So you want to be in control of your own destiny. And I believe that assertiveness, that, you know, I would say striking first, because a great drop is aggressive. Speed is only one way to be aggressive. But I would say playing freely, which is kind of putting all of those, the eagles together, the effort, the attitude, the gratitude, the learning, the enjoyment, the sportsmanship, putting that all together on every point and playing, Ava, every point freely will get you to play the way James is asking you to play. And in order to play freely, Ava, you have to shed your fear of missing. So, like, let me ask you, or I know we were talking a little bit the other day. Remember the announcer in the ALW match was saying, oh wow, Ava's has this great strategy. You were winning, and Ava has this great strategy of taking some pace off the ball. And you tell me, no, I just was afraid. I was nervous or tight, and I wasn't hitting the ball as cleanly or as hard as I normally do. I thought that was so hilarious. Is that you're trying to do it and it's not happening. Circumstance there is then the culprit. Circumstance is holding you back. So then I'll put a question to you, Ava, is there, if you play more aggressive, a fear of you missing in singles or doubles?
Of course.
So why are you afraid of missing?
It's not that I'm afraid of missing. Well, it is. No, okay, it is. I'm afraid of missing. And I get mad at myself when I miss. I get so upset when I miss. And I think that honestly, it's because growing up in Florida, in this environment with this super competitive tennis environment, my coaches were always so tough on me, and I don't think they coached me in the way that you coach people. I think they coached me in a pretty awful way because I was never it was never okay to miss. I was never allowed to miss. Every time I missed or every time I made any mistake, it was like I would immediately get yelled at. There was immediate correction, yelling, go run sprints. I was never like encouraged to try and take risk on court. It was always like if you miss, you get yelled at. That was like how my academy worked. Like anytime we would miss a ball or make unforced error, it was always like unforced error equals punishment. So I would always get, so now it's in my brain. And the same thing in
Mm,
college, the same thing with my college coach. Anytime we had unforced
mm.
errors, they would get mad at us. They would yell at us. And it was always, okay, well, you're making too many, I see too many errors on these courts. Everyone's running sprints, everyone get on the line. So
So
it's like in my soul to be like, no, I
it's
can't miss.
ingrained.
Just too much life
We have a
experience.
lot of work to do. This call can go on for hours. So there's a lot there that you said, and I appreciate you being so candid. Okay, so I'm going to kind of unwind it a little bit. It is okay to be disciplined if you're late to practice with no good reason. Run sprints because you let a drop shot bounce twice because you didn't want to run for it. Those things, you know, but those are under your control. So what I would say, you need to now be your own coach and take full control of your own joy, because you mentioned burnout and you're at like the height of your life. I mean, you are a college player playing a sport that is the most popular sport in America, the fastest growing sport. People would love to be in your shoes right now, especially the prisoners that you met. They would die to be outside of prison, right? So you got to look at that and say, this is my moment. I cannot spend any more time wasting it. Now, it is okay to be angry because emotions aren't bad or good. They either work for you or against you, but they're not bad or good. You don't want to judge your emotions just like you don't want to judge yourself. So you said I also get angry or frustrated. Well, that's okay, because you know you could have made that shot. You're frustrated. As long as it doesn't affect you mentally or emotionally in a negative way for the next point, then you're good. You got to get it out of your system or handle it or channel it. But my advice to you on an unforced error, so let's take that piece because there was a lot there. Unforced errors, Ava, should give you confidence.
What?
Unforced errors should give you confidence.
That's crazy.
No, I'm
Please
serious.
explain.
I'm being dead serious. All right. So when you played ALW in Virginia, right?
Right.
Did you remember any particular unforced error that if you didn't make that mistake, you would have won that point? Do you remember any of those? Any
No.
in particular? Did you make any unforced errors in that match?
I think I definitely no, she forced most of them.
But is there any that were unforced?
I'm sure
Any?
there were. There's probably a couple, yeah.
So I think there was like a forehand down the line pass. I think you barely missed, and yes, of course, with her you got to really measure it tight. But if you are in a position, against the world number one in particular, that's why I'm using this example. If you're in a position to have a ball that you normally would make and you miss, that should give you confidence, because you're like, I put her in a position that I could have won the point if I made the makeable ball. You see? You see the mindset shift there is, it's not that I don't have confidence when I make an unforced error, but that I'm privileged enough and good enough to get to a point where I made an unforced error. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, like if I'm in a position where I make an unforced error, instead of saying I could have won that point, curse word, I could say I could have won that point. Nice.
Yeah. I could have won that point and I'm going to win the next one. There's no way I'm going to miss that same ball twice. So now what you're doing is you're now giving your mind hope, because the brain needs hope. Just like the prisoners, they need hope. They look forward to being on good behavior. Why? Because then they can play more pickleball. So you need hope. So, especially playing a really tough opponent, it's like, wow, I was in that spot. All I had to do was make that shot. I'm going to make that the next time. So that now every unforced error builds this confidence, this hope, this potential, rather than deflating it. Now, I will go to, if every ball that you hit in that match was a forced error, then you should say, nice job, ALW. You did a great job. I did all I could and I didn't make any unforced errors. All of them were forced errors. Then there you're like, that day she was too good. But in talking to you and watching the match, it was that you weren't on your best game because it was stadium court, because who you were playing. And my thing there is, play the ball. The pickleball is the same weight, shape, and size. If it gets cracked or warped, you can have the referee sub the ball out, but the ball is the same as what you've been practicing with. So make your opponent faceless and play the ball that you're used to playing, and then take it from there. Block out the stadium court, block out the fans, block out your opponent. If that takes you away from playing freely. But if you need mojo, if you need encouragement, if you need a chip on your shoulder, you know, she's unbeatable, Ava. Don't even bother. Don't even bother. She's unbeatable. And if that gets you fired up, then you might want to make your opponent have a face. So it all comes down to you and what makes you tick and what inspires and motivates you. So inspiration is external. So for example, you coming with me and helping me with the pickleball program, the pickle program with prisoners, for you that was inspirational. Part of that was inspirational. And so that's pulling from the outside. And what you drew from that, from what you just said before, which is cool, is that you drew out some more gratitude for yourself, right?
Absolutely.
So the inspiration led to more gratitude, which now is a controllable going forward for you. And then motivation is tough because there are some days where you're not going to want to get up and practice. You're not going to want to stay late and practice. You're not going to work out at the gym. You're not going to want to work out because you ate too much turkey during Thanksgiving, whatever it might be. So then you got to say to yourself, you got to default to your purpose. But why am I doing this? Why?
How do I
So
know my purpose?
so you haven't written it down?
Well, it's tough because I feel like at this point in my life, I have to have a purpose for so many things. Like, I have to have a purpose for doing my homework. I have to have a purpose for going to class. I have to have a purpose for playing my collegiate events. I have to have a purpose for playing PPA, I just feel like I have so many different purposes. I have to have a purpose for being a good daughter, for playing with my little brothers. So many things. I have too many purposes. And
Well,
it's
those
hard
that you
to say
described, Ava, are not purposes. Those are roles. So you have a lot of roles in your life,
too many.
but they all should lead to a higher level purpose. And I'll give you a real example. So my mom is and was my inspiration. She was always there for my twin brother and I. She was always supportive. We competed in tennis, and I competed at UConn, and it was joy for her to come and just watch her boys play. And my dad was different. My dad was like, you should have done this, you could have done this, why are you doing that? He knew the score. So you need that. And that reminds me of James. You need that. But
You
then you
really
need that
need
support system of, it's okay, Ava. I don't even know if you won or lost, but all I know by the look in your eye today was that you wanted it and you ran down every ball. And I'm so excited for you because if you keep doing that day in, day out, you're going to make something of this sport. You need two of those voices to get you to where you want to go. And so going back to my mom, unfortunately, she passed away 2 years ago of pancreatic cancer. And, that was really rough because we only had 30 days notice that she was at stage 4. And so, my brother visited her every day. And we slept there some nights and in the living room. And it was really tough. And then we came up with the idea to set a world record in her honor. And, we had already set 3 other world records, 2 in tennis and then 1 in pickleball. But, we wanted to do another one in pickleball. And we're like, the pickleball volley rally is looming out there. That one has never been tried or done before. And we should do it. But I don't just do records just to do them. There has to be a higher level of purpose to do the record, to go through that self torture. It's mental torture, it's emotional torture because the world is watching. and you don't want to let anyone down. You typically only have one attempt. You have it on that day that you have to say in advance, and it doesn't matter if you're sick or under the weather, you got to do it. And so I cut a piece of her flannel shirt, and I wear that as a reminder of her, and I don't take it off. And so I remember playing a tournament when she had just passed. My brother and I were entered into the regionals, the Atlantic City regionals, and in the finals, our one of our opponents, a friend of ours, said, "Aren't you hot with that flannel shirt around your waist?" And I didn't answer. I wasn't in a good space to answer then, but I was wearing it in her honor, and we ended up winning gold, and it was a great feeling. And my dad was really proud of us because he saw the picture of us with the gold medals, and he saw the flannel shirt around our waist. But then my brother at one point said it might be a bit much with the flannel shirt all over the place, people are asking. And so now it's a wristband, so it's a little more incognito. But what isn't incognito is the purpose of why this August 17th, my brother and I set the world record. And it was because I had put out there, I'm going to do this in her honor. And I don't say that to make you sad, Ava, but what I do say to you is that you might not know your purpose right now of why you play pickleball, but I really encourage you to think about it, meditate on it, talk to your loved ones and your friends and your coaches and your family and your brother James about it. Why pickleball? Yes, you're good at it and you love it, but you're good at a lot of things. You love a lot of things. Why is it pickleball? And I would even challenge you, not necessarily today, Ava, but I would challenge you to say, Ava, is what do you want to get from pickleball? And then what do you want to give back to pickleball? Because you got to say, so what? Then what? I win gold. So what? Then what? I become, you're 16 in the world. I become top 10 in the world. So what? Then what? I become top 5 in the world. So what? Then what? That's what you have to answer, because it can't be just about winning, because winning leads to emptiness. Look at Michael Phelps, right? The most decorated Olympic athlete in the history of the Olympics. And he felt empty the day that he got home. You don't want that feeling. You want to get home after a win and say, that was awesome. And it wasn't just that I won, but that I was under the weather. I didn't want to practice that morning, but I still did. I didn't want to run down every ball, but I still did. I beat someone that I never have beaten before, and I figured it out. I'm so proud of myself for doing that. Those are the elements that make up your purpose, not the wins or the losses. The win is the byproduct of you controlling your controllables and focusing on them during the competition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's tough. I mean, I wrote my purpose. I have a bigger purpose and a smaller purpose, but the Cliff Note version of my purpose is to be inspired and inspire someone every day.
That's an awesome purpose.
And so that's why when I go to jail on Fridays, I'm all pumped up because I feel like I'm right where I need to be. Of course, it's really scary because I'm not in touch with civilization for a few hours. I'm not allowed to bring in my cell phone. I can't take pictures. I can't ask questions. I can't do a million things. But I know what I can do is I can care about these people and help them to the best of my ability without judgment and teach them hope, because hope brings you to your purpose. Hope gets you through those tough moments when you don't want to practice and you don't want to be aggressive and deal with it and accept the chaos of being aggressive, like your brother James says. But that's okay, because then when you think back about why you're doing it, then it just is. It's just there. And I go back to this world record, but obviously you could tell I'm really passionate about it. But I remember a news reporter. It was, I don't know if it was ESPN or NBC. I don't know who it was. Someone had asked me, after we set the record, you know, what were you sure? Were you sure of anything when you set out to do this record? I think it was in January when you put the application in, January, February, the beginning of this year. And Ava, I said, I'm sure of two things: that I love my mother and that we're going to set a record in her honor. And I was sure of those two things, and the record came true. And so that's the thing. It didn't matter. And was I fearful that we might miss, that I might let down my mom's legacy and let down my dad and my brother? Of course. But then when you go right after your purpose, fear goes away. When you go after your purpose, fear dissipates. But fear creeps in when you're trying to control an uncontrollable, like winning. Matter of fact, I don't believe that when you play, when's your next tournament? When's your next tournament?
In 17 days, Daytona.
Daytona. Cool. 17 days. Yes, my brother and I could have played Ben and Colin Johns in the first round in that one 2 years ago. Long story. Anyways, Daytona. So in your pickleball journal that I know you have, and if you don't, you're going to get one, is you write in the journal, I want to win gold. Are you playing singles and doubles?
I'm not playing singles, I'm only playing doubles.
Gender doubles or mixed?
Both, gender and mixed.
Cool. Okay. So you got gender and mixed. So you would write down in your journal, I want to win gold for both of those events. There's nothing wrong with putting that down in your journal. Matter of fact, I encourage you to do it. Write it down, because when you write it down, it becomes more real. But then when you write it down, you imagine yourself failing, not playing well. And then you accept those emotions, because once you accept the emotion of losing, you can deal with it. But if you don't go through the motions of accepting that, then you're going to be afraid of how you're going to react if you're down or losing.
Hmm.
Do you know? So then
Yeah.
once you go through the acceptance of that, then you imagine only winning up into the event. But then when you get to the event, Ava, you are not going to utter the word win, prize money, gold medal, draw. If we win or lose, do we advance? How many matches are we playing? None of that, because all of that is tied to something you have no control over. What you want to be is, this is what your mindset should be. Your partner high fives you and gives you a big hug, and you're like, why are you giving me a hug? And she or he goes to you, Ava, we just won gold. That's where you want your mindset to be. You want to be so focused on your controllables. You want to be so focused on your effort and your attitude and your gratitude and your learning and your enjoyment, your sportsmanship, your playing freely. You want to be so focused on those things that you don't have the mind share to focus on winning. Does that
That
make
makes a lot of
sense?
sense. Yeah.
I'm not saying it's easy to do. Believe me, I would be a pretty good pickleball player if I only listened to my own coach. But any other questions or anything that you were thinking about?
I think so. I think that was good.
I think